All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at a case that's literally the definition of an American true crime legend. We're talking about the 1947 Black Dahlia murder, an unsolved mystery that's so chilling, it's kept historians and armchair detectives awake at night for decades. We're going to walk through the timeline, the intense investigation, and the sheer mind-boggling, bizarre nature of a crime that just stopped the whole country in its tracks.
So picture this. It's the morning of January 15th, 1947. You're in a quiet, totally unassuming neighborhood in Los Angeles. The post-war boom is in full swing, the morning is calm, and a local mom is just taking her toddler out for a stroll. But you know, that peaceful, everyday morning, it's about to be completely shattered by something she spots just a few feet off the neighborhood sidewalk.
What she stumbled on was so incredibly gruesome, and posed in a way that was so surreal, so unnatural, she didn't even process it as human at first. She actually thought she was looking at a discarded store mannequin. But, well, it wasn't a mannequin. It was the naked body of a young woman.
Section 1. The scene. A baffling contradiction.
Now, to really wrap our heads around what the LAPD walked into, we've got to look at this absolutely terrifying contrast. On one hand, you have the physical trauma. The victim's body was heavily mutilated, and most shockingly, it had been sliced completely clean in half, right at the waist. But here's where it gets crazy. Despite that massive level of trauma, investigators found a pristine environment. Literally not a single drop of blood at the scene. So the LAPD is staring at this horrifyingly clear fact. This crime did not happen on that sidewalk. She was undeniably killed somewhere else, completely drained of blood, and then deliberately transported and posed for the world to find. Which immediately begs the question, who is she?
Section 2. Identifying the victim. The 56-minute miracle.
Right away, the LAPD knew they were out of their depth, so they called in the FBI. But remember, guys, this is 1947. No digital databases, no email, no smartphones. So how do you get fingerprints to Washington, D.C. fast? They used something called a Soundphoto. It's basically a super primitive fax machine that news services use to send pictures over telephone wires. They took these blurry, early-tech images of the victim's fingerprints and zipped them clear across the country to the FBI. 100 million. Seriously, think about that number for a second. At that time, the FBI had over 100 million fingerprints on file. Agents had to manually search for a match using that blurry sound photo we just talked about. And against all odds, they found it. From the second they got those blurred prints from LA, it took the FBI exactly 56 minutes to positively ID the victim. 56 minutes! It was an absolute miracle of mid-century forensic work.
Now you're probably wondering, why did the feds have a young woman's fingerprints on file anyway? Well, if we trace her timeline, her prints popped up not just once, but twice. First, in January 1943, she applied for a civilian clerk job at the Army's Camp Cook Commissary up in California. Then, just 7 months later, boom, August 1943, she gets arrested by Santa Barbara police for underage drinking. Just minor, everyday run-ins with the system, right? But they left a paper trail. It meant the FBI didn't just have her prints. They had her mugshot, too, which they immediately fired off to the press.
Thanks to that 56-minute search, the victim finally had a name, Elizabeth Short. She was a 22-year-old hopeful who moved out to Hollywood chasing a career in the movies. The press, totally eating up the sensationalism of the crime, quickly nicknamed her the Black Dahlia. Word was she loved wearing sheer black clothes. Plus, there was a dark play on a really popular movie out at the exact same time called The Blue Dahlia. So the name just stuck.
Section 3. The investigation. The FBI and LAPD joint effort. So, the FBI throws its full weight behind the LAPD. And they didn't just keep this in LA. We're talking a massive nationwide pursuit here. They're pumping out wanted flyers, running comprehensive records checks, doing interviews all across the country. And out of this massive dragnet, they zeroed in on a few highly specific leads they just had to chase down.
One of the most fascinating angles actually came right from the physical evidence of the body itself. Investigators put together a suspect profile suggesting the killer might actually have medical or dissection skills. And honestly, the logic here makes total sense. The victim's body was cut in half so cleanly, with such bizarre precision, that this didn't look like a frantic random attack. It pointed to someone with a terrifying level of anatomical knowledge. Because of this, federal agents specifically started digging into a group of students over at the nearby USC Medical School.
Then, right in the middle of all these nationwide interviews and profiles, they get a real spark of hope. The source material calls it a tantalizing potential break in the case. Basically, authorities receive an anonymous letter, and investigators strongly believe this letter might have actually been sent by the killer themselves, literally taunting the police.
This next part, It perfectly captures how absolutely agonizing detective work can be. First, the breakthrough. The Bureau actually manages to pull usable fingerprints right off that anonymous letter. Incredible, right? They literally have the physical impression of the person who sent it. But then, the crushing reality. They run those prints through that gigantic 100 million strong FBI database and zip. Nothing. The prints weren't in the files. It was the ultimate dead end in a case that was absolutely desperate for a break.
Section 4. An enduring mystery. The trail goes cold.
So, despite that incredible 56-minute identification, the combined forces of the LAPD and the FBI and a literal nationwide dragnet, the killer just slipped through the cracks, which leaves us with the haunting question: who killed the Black Dahlia and why? It's still a profound mystery. The murderer was never found, nobody was ever brought to justice for what happened to 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, and honestly, given how many decades have passed since that cold January morning in 1947, it's highly likely no one ever will be. The trail went ice cold, but the legend and the chilling questions left behind only continue to grow. I mean, what kind of person could commit such a precise, terrifying act and then just vanish into the history of Los Angeles? It's definitely something to think about as we wrap up today's